Pacific Northwest is a special place to call home, and the environment is a key part of living here. Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Leah Pizzetti. Our Environment Northwest team has covered some big stories this year, including the race to save our southern resident orcas from extinction, how researchers and communities are monitoring and preparing for earthquakes, how lessons learned from a large wildfire decades ago is still influencing firefighting efforts today, and how scientists are taking action to keep a species from disappearing. Over the next half hour, we'll revisit these important headlines. We begin with the race to save our southern resident orcas. A study released this spring found killer whales are on a fast track to extinction. While there are efforts underway to reverse the decline and save the species, one researcher I sat down with tells me it's going to be a fight to save this species. If we didn't change anything today, given the current circumstances, would we be able to save this population?
If we do nothing, we will lose this population forever.
Right now, there are exactly 74 southern resident killer whales, a decrease of 24 since the 90s.
Around here, they're iconic, so we all get our hopes up when there's a new calf. We all grieve collectively when one dies. We know when the population goes up or down by one individual.
Rob Williams, co-founder of nonprofit Oceans Initiative, has devoted his career to studying orcas.
Oh my God, oh my gosh.
He says a goal of 2.3% growth per year for 28 years was set, hoping to get the population totals back into the 90s. Instead, over the last 30 years, there's been a decline of 1.5% every year. The Center of Whale Research estimates there were about 98 orcas in the mid-90s to the now 74. So this has been decades in the making?
Yes.
Why has it taken so long to correct it?
The first problem is that you have to quantify how big the problem is, and it takes decades of science.
So that's what Rob is doing. He and a team of 17 scientists recently published a study digging into the data to see what the reality of population recovery actually looks like. Williams says of the 74 southern resident orcas right now, about half are female. A portion of those are either too old or too young to reproduce. That leaves about a dozen female orcas carrying the population. With a 17-month gestation period, each would only have a calf every 3 to 5 years, and historically speaking, about half of calves die, so they won't all make it. This means that with the assumption that older whales are also dying during this time frame, it would take 50 years to grow the population by 15 to 20 whales.
So we have to manage our expectation that we didn't get into this situation overnight, and it will take a long, long time for us to recover.
This research also looks at the causes of this decline. Williams says the top factor is a lack of food, Chinook salmon specifically. Second, noise contamination. Whales use acoustic sounds to listen for salmon and hunt. Too many boats and noises make it hard for them to feed. And third, contaminants like plastic and forever chemicals in the food they do eat. What should we do?
Well, the whales are telling us that they need a lot more salmon.
This, he suggests, could come down to reducing Chinook salmon harvest, increasing hatchery production, or stopping catching Chinook salmon in the open ocean to leave them for the orcas. What happens if we lose this population?
I don't even want to think about losing this population. I can't imagine the Salish Sea, the Pacific Northwest, without our iconic killer whales and Chinook salmon. We've seen this in cases from California to Alaska, that if you remove the top predators, the lower trophic levels, the system collapses like a house of cards.
And that system is our oceans.
That's our Salish Sea. That's what we call home.
So it is possible to help. We just have to actually do it.
I think the number one thing I want people to learn from this study is that populations have bounced back from much, much more severe genetic bottlenecks than this.
And that is the hope. Now, whale lovers say they believe history was made at Penn Cove in early November. They reported sightings of southern resident orcas going far into the cove for the first time in more than 50 years. Kat Martin took this video of the encounter, knowing it was a moment to remember.
We were all taken aback. This was history in the making. This is the first time in 54 years that these whales had come back to this cove in particular. We followed them down all the way to the Coupeville Wharf and watched them as they made a beautiful pass, spy hopping, tail lobbing.
There's a lot of history there. It was in Penn Cove in 1970 that whales were trapped and captured. Many died in the process. Experts say it's unclear when they decided to return. Another species whose future we hold in our hands is snow crabs. Warm water killed millions of snow crabs during the pandemic, prompting officials to sound the alarm. The crabbing season was canceled 2 years in a row, and this year, crabbers are back in the Bering Sea. While this is welcome news for crabbers, things are not back to normal just yet.
When I was 12 years old, I knew I was going to be a fisherman.
Oyston Lone is proud of his more than 40 years crabbing, but in the last 3 years,
We've pretty much had a collapse in our crab fisheries.
he's watched the industry plummet into uncharted waters. NOAA scientists report warm water in the Bering Sea killed 10 billion snow crabs, leading to canceled seasons in 2022 and 2023 for the first time ever.
Not having a seasons was devastating, to say the least. I think I speak for the whole fleet on that.
That time not crabbing has helped the population recover. So a small season is back now for the first time in 3 years. This year, they'll be able to catch just shy of 5 million pounds. Small, but better than nothing.
The vessels they're barely hanging on there right now. So these openings that we're getting here now, these small openings are really going to help the fleet to get back on their feet.
Scientists set the total allowable catch based on how the population is doing each year.
The biggest season was probably in the early 90s. We were fishing snow crab.
The biggest season was in 1992, when the limit was 333 million pounds of snow crab. 93's more than 207 million pounds was big, and 98's more than 234 million pounds was huge. Even with the drop in the 2000s, seasons still hovered between about 25 and 70 million pounds per year. So the less than 5 million this year is nothing close to normal.
It's dramatically changed. The processors have been struggling, the fishermen are struggling, the communities are struggling. I think we're all kind of banding together and get through this.
Oyston hopes small years will get the season back to where it's been in the past, with a focus on protecting the population.
It's going to make things stronger, and hopefully we can rebuild our fisheries here one step at a time.
Crabbing season runs through May 15th. This is the smallest snow crab fishing season the department has had outside of fully closing the fishery. A wild animal still listed as a threatened species is coming back to the mountains of Washington. Grizzly bears are coming back to the North Cascades. That region is an area where they used to live before humans killed them off, so it's been targeted as a place to continue the federal rehabilitation. The plan calls for bringing 3 to 7 grizzlies each year from the Rocky Mountains or British Columbia to the North Cascades over the next 5 to 10 years. While scientists want to bring them back to their natural habitat, locals and farmers are worried about the potential impacts.
If a kid goes out there, he's in jeopardy. If that predator comes around the farm animals are in jeopardy.
The goal is to rebuild a population of 200 bears over the next century. Right now, there is no timeline for when the reintroductions will start.
The Pacific Northwest, especially west of the Cascades, is a real earthquake hazard zone.
Just ahead, experts weigh in on whether a recent uptick in small earthquakes could foreshadow something bigger.
But when the private citizens start doing it themselves, now you have an opportunity to have a big impact.
It's been 30 years since wildfires scorched Chelan County. We'll look at the lessons learned then that are influencing fire prevention efforts today. Also creating a new generation of sea stars. How UW researchers are working to bring the species back from the brink of extinction along the West Coast. Stay with us. We'll be right back. From Mount St. Helens to Mount Adams in southern Washington, the Northwest has seen a spike in earthquake activity in recent months. The question many people have been asking, could the quakes foreshadow something bigger? King 5's Savannah Welch went to the experts for answers.
When you look at Mount Rainier, what you might not know is that at any given time, there are a number of small earthquakes happening, ranging anywhere from 0.5 to 2.0. Mount Rainier and other volcanoes in the Northwest are seeing more action, and scientists are watching.
The Pacific Northwest, especially west of the Cascades, is a real earthquake hazard zone.
The Northwest, also known as earthquake country. And in the last 9 months, that couldn't be more true. In September, there were 6 earthquakes at Mount Adams, which usually only sees one every couple of years. Mount St. Helens also made headlines with 350 quakes between February and June. And the biggest of 2024, July's 6.4 magnitude earthquake off Vancouver Island. But is all of this normal?
In terms of activity this year, I don't think there's much we've seen that would surprise us.
Jackie Kaplan-Auerbach is a seismologist and professor at Western Washington University in Bellingham. She says that while these earthquakes may be alarming, it's actually business as usual.
Sometimes when activity picks up, again, it's kind of on our minds. We get nervous that maybe this is, a sign that something bigger is coming. We have never, in sort of the history of studying earthquakes, seen patterns that indicate something larger is coming.
But scientists say that doesn't mean we shouldn't be prepared, especially for the big one.
In the future, we expect to have a very large earthquake that comes from offshore. The other side of the coin is that could happen anytime from literally tomorrow, but also 200 years from now.
University of Washington professor and director of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, Harold Tobin, says they're bracing for the potential for a 9.0 earthquake from the Cascadia subduction zone. He says that, along with past earthquakes like the 2001 Nisqually earthquake, are reason enough for people to be ready.
I think I kind of give us about a B to B minus for our increased preparedness. We're certainly better prepared than we were at the time of the Nisqually earthquake. Buildings are built better than they were back then. We should be doing a lot more of retrofitting of older buildings and making just all the systems that keep our cities and towns going more resilient.
New technology, especially artificial intelligence, is being used to detect earthquakes. Now, as for public warnings, these are critical. Wireless emergency alerts will be sent directly to your phone to warn those in affected areas. For Environment Northwest, I'm Savannah Welch.
And as the number of earthquakes increases, scientists in the Northwest are working to add more seismic monitoring stations. In 2014, there were just 240 stations. After a decade of work, there are now nearly 700. With the Northwest metro areas fully covered, scientists are now working to add monitors to volcanoes and less populated areas.
The shaking from that epicenter is going to hit a station sooner if there's more stations. If we only have a handful of stations, that seismic wave may have to travel dozens of miles before it's detected, which eliminates several seconds of potential extra warning.
Plus, in 2026, scientists hope to add seismometers underwater off of Oregon's coast to monitor rumblings on the ocean floor as well. When it comes to surviving a natural disaster like an earthquake, research shows strength is in numbers. In Seattle, more than 50 grassroots groups of neighbors have created their own emergency hubs. The groups designate a central meeting spot, coordinate supplies, and conduct drills.
Despite the fact we will have an earthquake someday and it will be a big and potentially life-changing event, you can survive if you take the action to get prepared now.
And with that preparedness, experts recommend being ready for 2 weeks with no access to power, water, or trips to the grocery store. This past summer was record-breaking hot. And like every summer, Western Washington lived with the threat of a devastating wildfire. 30 years ago, flames erupted around the town of Leavenworth. Decades later, lessons learned then are still impacting decisions made today. It was 1994. After a period of extreme drought and heat.
And they expect the wind to start up.
The worst case scenario in Washington.
It is blowing flaming embers that is causing these spot fires.
Multiple major wildfires started.
We're not really fighting it. We're basically trying to stay out of its way.
Dozens of homes lost.
It's going to be okay.
Towns like Leavenworth evacuated.
Everybody was gone. It was a ghost town.
Kelly O'Brien flips through a photo album from back then. He's the current fire chief for Chelan County Fire District number 3, and in 1994 had just become a full-time firefighter.
I got kind of thrown into a situation that was pretty tough for a 24-year-old.
30 years later, he remembers the inferno well.
The fire itself was actually jumping in front of itself because of the wind. So you're getting these embers blowing across the mountainsides, and it would start a spot fire, and that spot fire would just blow up, and then it would start another one.
He says it was a learning experience not just for him, but for people living there too.
Our communities become more fire aware than they were in '94.
One major mindset change since then, the locals are proactive instead of reactive.
This one right here.
Sounds good.
That's the case for nearby homeowners like Bob Johnson, who had just started building a home when the fires started.
I had a call from a neighbor up the road, and in the background it sounded like the Vietnam War with airplanes and helicopters.
Fast forward 30 years, and now he hires private crews to maintain his land. His goal, keep his forest healthy and help out firefighters, taking steps like thinning trees.
This is just part of what we have to get rid of.
Leaving enough greenery to encourage animals to visit, but discourage fire.
If we pretend we're fire, where would you want to burn? This is not inviting, and this is filled with fuel.
This an important step in his neighborhood for another key reason. They are cut off from fire resources because they're not in the Chelan District 3 boundary, so if a fire were to start, there's a chance help would not be there right away.
Part of the reason it's outside the fire district is because we can't access that area year-round. We're not just a wildland agency. We fight fires in the winter, and I can't get up the road.
So Bob's neighborhood falls under the state's response.
DNR will tell you they don't fight structure fires, and they don't, and they're not set up to do that. They're there for the wildland component. If we're available, we're going. Legally, I have to protect my community first, who are paying the taxes to support the organization.
It's a complicated setup, so this preventative work being done to stop fires from starting in the first place is even more important.
Land 3 can't do all the fuel reduction themselves. Forest Service can't do it all, DNR can't do it all. But when the private citizens start doing it themselves, now you have an opportunity to have a big impact on the fuels surrounding the homes.
Bob says he's paid for the preventative labor himself, with state and Department of Natural Resources funds covering about 30%. But he says every penny is worth it.
Everybody loves their homes, whether they live in the city or the suburbs or the woods. And the idea of it being taken away so quickly, so unexpectedly, is a shocking reality that we all have to absorb. But up here, it's a message that seems to be a little more poignant because we're surrounded by beautiful things that are fuel.
And with these current efforts, both Bob and Captain O'Brien say they keep those fires in '94 in the back of their minds.
It's important to take the lessons that I learned personally on that and apply it to the 24-year-old that I just hired.
Hoping preventative steps now will keep a fire like this in the past.
The impact, though, it had to me was really what fire can do.
When you lose top predators in ecosystems, the ecosystem goes haywire.
Still ahead, saving sea stars. How researchers are working to bring back the species back to the West Coast after disease nearly wiped them out. Scientists at the University of Washington have been working for years to make sure an important species does not go extinct. And for the first time ever, lab-grown sea stars are being released into the wild. All these sea stars have ever known is this Friday Harbor lab.
So we're gonna get this out.
And after years of calling these four walls home,
Guys are going on a big adventure.
they get a parade down to the waterfront.
Gently lowering it.
It's a day
Nerve-wracking.
Jason Hoden has been waiting for.
I mean, this is
We've been talking about this for 5 years now.
Yeah.
So like, you know, it's pretty exciting.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time. It's time.
When disease wiped out sea stars from most West Coast beaches, Jason and his team were tasked with saving the population.
This is our first time of us putting our captive bred stars out and monitoring them.
I'm a lot more worried than they look. They don't look worried at all.
Right on.
These lab-grown sea stars are about to be set free in the wild on their own.
Nobody's ever done this before with this age of star or with any captive bred star before, so we have no idea what we're going to expect.
With an audience of inquisitive minds.
How big do they get to be?
They can get to be about the size of like a trash can lid.
Jason explains why they're doing it here in Friday Harbor.
Here in our area, we still have some of these stars left, but in some of the places where sunflower stars used to be, like in California, there are almost none left at all.
We're gonna push this guy into the water.
The team has a thought-out plan. Divers will put a marker pole on the sea floor. That's where they'll release the stars. They'll analyze how they do on their own.
This project is integral to that because we're now finally getting to see what these stars will do when they go out in the wild.
And finally,
there they go.
After years of working toward this moment,
This is the cool part.
the sea stars start their journey.
They've got that bin with them, and they're going to take it down with them when they descend down to the bottom.
The next phase of this years-long research is now beginning.
It's a million questions that we've had about what these stars will do that, you know, we've been thinking about for years, and now we're finally going to get some answers.
And as soon as the divers get to the bottom, a few sea stars instantly leave the tub, exploring their new natural home.
It's the first checkbox, but it's not like there's a last checkbox.
Above water, Jason says this is a big step in helping save a species nearing extinction.
We're not going to repopulate the entire ocean with these 10 stars or even with the hundreds that we have in the lab, but we can sort of show how it's done.
After years of lab work,
That was like 5 years in the making, basically, yeah.
this day is worth the wait.
It's incredible to think about, yeah. It was really nice to see him swim off with the stars. It's a great moment.
Now, if the sea stars survive and thrive, the goal will be to mass produce them on a larger scale and release them onto beaches along the West Coast. That does it for us here. You can revisit all of our Environment Northwest stories anytime on king5.com and King 5 Plus from everyone here at King 5. Thanks for watching.